There are currently so many theories about who Marrok is, and from what I can find, there are three major suspects as to who this might be. That being evil Ezra, Starkiller, and Barriss Offee. So given that there is so much interest and attention on this one character, I thought it might be interesting to see whether or not these theories hold any water, and who I think might be the real person behind the mask. So let's get started. The one theory that I have seen popped up the most often has been that Marrok is Ezra, which on the surface is a pretty entertaining thought. After all, it would be a pretty neat twist that it turned out that the person Ahsoka and Sabine have been looking for has been right under their noses all along. But while it is entertaining to consider, the theory kinda loses its sparkle once you really dig into the details. For one, if Ezra was truly Marrok, then it would bring up the question of how he returned in the first place. So far, the show has set up the premise that both Ezra and Thrawn have been stranded at a nearby galaxy due to the migration patterns of the Purgles, which is why the Magistrate alongside Shin and Balin have embarked on a quest to retrieve the Grand Admiral. But if Ezra was Marrok all along, then how did he find his way back, and why isn't Thrawn with him? After all, if Ezra did manage to return and he was now evil, then surely he would have brought Thrawn along with him. It's also worth mentioning that having Ezra return as an evil inquisitor would kinda backtrack the arc that he went through in Rebels, especially during his adventures flirting with the dark side and being influenced by Maul. During Season 2 and Season 3 of Rebels, Ezra kinda goes through a short phase of embracing the dark side. We see him use the Force in ways that are un-Jedi-like and moments where he gives in to his anger. But while Ezra does dabble in the dark side of the Force for a moment, by the time Season 4 rolls around, the idea of Ezra embracing the dark side is somewhat dropped. His character has managed to move past this and in turn become a better Jedi. In fact, Ezra's strength of character and resolve in rejecting the dark side is best encapsulated towards the end of the show, with the death of Kanan, the management of his grief, and his outright rejection of Palpatine's enticing offers. So given that Ezra himself has stood in front of the biggest evil and gone through trials that would have led many down a much darker path, it actually seems somewhat counterintuitive for him to now return as Marrok. It would essentially backtrack on all that character growth he went through in Rebels and ultimately create a far bigger plot hole. It's also worth mentioning that Ezra being the Inquisitor would also kinda clash with what we know about Marrok as a character so far. According to the official Star Wars website, Marrok was an Inquisitor during the Galactic Civil War, hunting for Jedi. And knowing what we know from Rebels, it just doesn't make sense that Ezra would be an Inquisitor while hanging out with the Ghost Crew. So this would mean that if Ezra was the Inquisitor, he would have to return pretty quickly after disappearing with Thrawn, which doesn't really sit right with me and does feel a little cheap. So I'm pretty confident that Marrok isn't Ezra in disguise. The second most talked about theory is that Marrok is actually the legendary character Starkiller from The Force Unleashed, Vader's secret apprentice. And to be fair, this is another interesting prospect. Given that Starkiller's real name is Galen Marek, which does sound pretty close to Marrok, it's no surprise as to why some people have drawn this link. Not to mention Sam Witwer, the voice actor behind Starkiller, has also been credited in the Ahsoka show, which really excited a lot of people. Marrok actually being Starkiller is also a plausible theory based on the timeline. Assuming that Starkiller never fought for the good guys as he did in the games and only stayed in the dark side, then him being an Inquisitor in canon while being trained by Vader is a possibility. However, this would still raise a lot of questions, namely, why wasn't he there to help out Vader during the original trilogy, especially with hunting down Luke, and why was Vader described as the last of his religion in A New Hope by an Imperial officer if the Inquisitors were still around?
The Jedi are extinct, their fire has gone out of the universe. You, my friend, are all that's left of their religion.
So really, this would add a lot more plot holes that would need to be corrected if Marrok was indeed Vader's secret apprentice. And unfortunately, if you are one of those people who are super excited about this possibility, then I'm afraid I might have to crush your dreams here. You see, as much as Sam Witwer was credited with a voice role in the show, the person actually credited with the role is Paul Darnell, the stuntman behind the mask. And in the episode where Mark does speak, Paul Darnell is the one who is credited with the work. And you might say that this is a misdirection. Well, it really isn't. You see, this isn't the first time Sam Witwer is credited in a Star Wars show despite not having a major role in it. This occurred a few times in The Mandalorian, and oftentimes a lot of these voice actors are credited for the smallest grunts or sounds in the background. So I wouldn't really get your hopes up about Sam Witwer reprising his role as the legendary Starkiller. Also, Marrok in the Ahsoka show isn't all that great. I mean, sure, he does look cool, but when facing off against Ahsoka one-on-one, Marrok genuinely loses the duel, which is a far cry from what Starkiller is supposed to be, which is this overpowered individual with the capability to go toe-to-toe with Darth Vader and momentarily hold his ground against Palpatine, something which Ahsoka struggled to do. And I think transporting Starkiller from Legends into canon wouldn't be that great of an idea, because it would also mean that the showrunners would have to nerf him in order for Starkiller to fit within the overall nature of the show and the canon universe. It simply doesn't make any sense for someone of Starkiller's power level to have been walking around in the background for this long without there being some news about his exploits. And as someone who loves the Force Unleashed games, I really don't want to see a nerfed Starkiller walking around. It would just take the fun out of it, so I don't think Marrok being Starkiller really fits. The last big theory that is floating around is that Marrok is actually Barriss Offee, and while narratively speaking, it would be interesting to see Ahsoka be confronted by her former Jedi friend, the same one who framed her for the Jedi bombings, it would also be flat out wrong. The Ahsoka show has already made mentions that Marrok is a male. Galen specifically mentions this in a previous episode, and with the actor playing the character being male as well, it just wouldn't make sense for Marrok to suddenly be Barriss Offee.
Marrok will complete his task.
Also, I feel like Marrok being Barriss would just shift the focus away from Thrawn and add in a whole layer of complexity that casual viewers might not be familiar with. And so this might not be something that the showrunners would want to do. So if Marrok isn't evil Ezra or Starkiller or Barriss Offee, then who exactly is he? Well, hear me out here, and I know this is going to sound a little crazy, but what if Marrok is an entirely new character? Not every Mysterious Star Wars character has to be someone we know, and I think given how much of the focus is on Thrawn and the new antagonists Baylan and Shin, it just seems right that Marrok is created as a totally new character. Simply one of the many Jedi who were forcefully converted into Inquisitors during the rise of the Empire. That being said, Marrok is still a very interesting character, and the show might still give us a few twists and turns using his character, and I can't wait to find out. Anyways, that's all for this video. Who do you think Marrok is? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. I am the Lost Acolyte,
and I have spoken.